G'day, and thanks for having me. It's a huge privilege for me to be with you all here today. I've heard it's been an amazing day so far. It's a real delight for me to be able to share my story. With that, I'm going to talk about some pretty heavy stuff. What I have been through hasn't been easy to live through, and if that makes you feel uncomfortable, you need to get up, take a breath, all that kind of stuff. Please don't think I will be offended at any moment if you need to do so, or if you just need a cuddle, please ask for consent before doing so. Look, if there was one thing that I would love everyone to know about me, it's not the things that I've overcome, the milestones that I've reached and the achievements that I've been able to acquire. It's actually the fact that I'm an auntie. So I've got 5 beautiful nephews, 1 beautiful niece, and any spare moment that I get not doing this around the world, sharing my story with audiences and kids and all that kind of stuff, I love spending time with those guys. Now, as an auntie, probably like a parent or a teacher or someone like that, you're not supposed to have favourites, right? But I reckon we'd all be lying if we said that we didn't. I do. His name is Max. Don't tell my other nephews or niece that. But when he was 12, when he was born 12 years ago, he's now 12, I was going through arguably the roughest period of my life to date. Some would say that things I was going through weren't really overcomeable, if that's a word. And my family, pretty amazing people, they've always supported me. And it wasn't a lack of support they were showing, they just were grappling. What do you say to a person who's going through that much grief, trauma and loss? And they didn't really have the words and they struggled with that concept. But Max was able to comfort me. I was able to hold him as a newborn. He clearly didn't have words either, he couldn't talk, he was a baby. But we're able to hold each other through that pain. And ever since that moment, we've been incredibly close. 4 years ago when he was 8, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I got a text off his mum, my sister-in-law Stacey, and she said, "Look, Max has had a really rough day at school. You're his best friend. Would it be okay if we figured out the time difference and you had a chat?" I said, "Of course." So figured out the time difference, having a chat on the phone, and Max is a bright, beautiful little boy, so high energy, all that kind of stuff, and I could tell that he was low. I said, "Mate, what's going on?" He said, "Look, the teacher asked me this question at school today. I got really embarrassed. I didn't know how to answer her. I felt really silly, and I'm really grappling with that." And I said, "Okay, look, mate, there's no problem too big. We can work this out together." Secretly, I was hoping it wasn't a maths problem. So I was pretty terrible at maths. And I said, "But what was the question that she asked you, mate? We'll figure it out together." And he said, "She asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up." And I kind of giggled inside because, he was 8, you can change your mind. I still don't know, I'm 35, all that kind of stuff. And I said, "Well, what are you good at, mate? What do you love doing? And maybe you can answer her if she asks you the same question tomorrow." So he has to think for a second and he said, "Maybe I could be a fireman just like Dad. That's my brother." And I said, "Mate, I reckon you'd be a really good fireman. You could definitely give that a crack." The next day he called. Didn't tell his mum, so I got into all sorts of trouble because of the international roaming and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "Look, Auntie Kath, I've changed my mind. I think I want to be a police officer just like Poppy." That's his grandfather, my dad. I said, "Buddy, you'd be a really awesome cop." The next day he called, he wanted to be a doctor. And I guess when you're 8, right, you dare to dream, and somewhere along the way, we lose our way. Those dreams get beaten out of us, life stress kicks in, we've got to pay bills, all that kind of stuff, and we get really serious. The next day he called, I thought he was going to change his mind again. I said, "Mate, you can be anything you want to be, you can't be everything, and just remember you're 8. This is not a finite answer, you can change your mind at any given moment." He said, "No, Auntie Kath, I'm set. It's going to be a fireman, that's what I'm set on. The reason I was calling you today, I wanted to ask you, do you remember when you were my age? What did you want to be when you grew up?" And I didn't have to think too hard. When I was 8, I had one goal, one dream, one wish, one ambition. I've got 3 older brothers. I'm from a really tiny country town on the border of New South Wales and Victoria called Finley, and I love playing cricket in the backyard with my brothers. So when I was 8, I decided that's what I want to do. I'm going to play cricket for Australia. Pretty simple, also complex, hard goal to reach. I had 2 problems with a goal as big and audacious as playing cricket for Australia. The first, I had no idea there was an Australian women's team. So back then the profile wasn't as big. No worries, I thought I'll play with Adam Gilchrist, Ricky Ponting, all my heroes, all that kind of stuff. The second problem that I had with a goal as big and audacious as playing cricket for my country is this. I was absolutely shithouse at playing cricket. So Mum and Dad, they thought I was awesome. They said, "We absolutely believe in you, Kath, you can do this." The coaches, on the other hand, they said, "Kath, we love your grit, we love your passion. We wish every athlete had your work ethic, but mate, the skill is just lacking. Why don't you focus in a sports administration career? You won't be lost to the game." And that taught me something at a very, very early age, when luck meets opportunity, and if you're willing to work hard enough for something, anything is truly possible. I just kept training and playing and training and playing and training and playing. I fast-tracked my uni degree as a young adult, and I got handed my first professional contract for Middlesex in London, based out of Lords, the home of cricket. I spent 2 years there as a right-handed opening batter, refining my craft, and the phone come calling. It was the New South Wales selectors. Said, Kath, I've been keeping an eye on your progress. We're ready to pick you. Can you get on the next flight home? So get on the next flight home, keep training, keep playing, keep training, keep playing. And in January 2011, my childhood dreams started to come true. I debuted for the New South Wales Breakers. Get the slides up. I scored 57 in a Player of the Match performance, and it honestly felt euphoric, right? It was at the Adelaide Oval, my family, my friends had all flown there, everyone's really proud, Player of the Match, all that kind of stuff. And I spent 4 games in that professional career, still performing, going really, really well, until suddenly my life changed in a very quick and sudden way, just 4 games into that professional career, when I broke my back playing cricket of all things. What happened was I was fielding in cover. That's the position between the batter and the bowler. The ball got hit past me very quickly. It raced off to the boundary for 4, and as I twisted like that to my left, the disc in my lower spine came out so quickly that the 2 vertebrae had nowhere to go. They cracked onto each other. Part of the bottom vertebrae cracked off, and it went straight into my spinal cord. I was 23, and not only is this dream just vanished in front of my eyes, but they said, Kath, you're now a paraplegic. It's life in a wheelchair. You're never going to walk again. I had 5 completely unsuccessful surgeries. Every time I'd wake up, they'd say, no good. One doctor believed in me though. He said, Kath, I've been doing some research. There's a new age technique. I think you qualify. We need to have some more tests. There's only one surgeon in the country doing it. His name is Matthew Scott Young. He's based out of the Gold Coast. If we can get you there and you qualify, I think it's your only chance. So off to the Gold Coast I go. Now the difference between this surgery and what happened with the first 5 and what you'd imagine with a spinal cord injury like mine, where they cut through your back, which is what happened for the first 5. With this one, and I'm stoked everyone's eating, they actually cut through your stomach. And they shift your vital organs aside and they access the spine that way. They line the vertebrae with titanium reinforcement and they put like a ball and socket joint in there. And the idea is that you get a whole lot more mobility. I actually grew 4 centimetres in that surgery, which was awesome. My BMI almost immediately improved. I was a chubby athlete. You've got to take those small wins as they come. But in all seriousness, the procedure after that surgery is they tell you, Kath, you've got to lie there in complete traction for 2 weeks. Don't move a centimetre. It is vital to potentially you being able to walk again. So for 2 weeks straight, when I wasn't sleeping, I'm looking up at the ceiling. That's all I could do. All sorts of head noise starts to creep in. I've got a lot of drugs going through my system. I can't think clearly. I'm in a lot of pain. I still can't feel anything below my waist. Am I ever going to take those steps that they're saying might be the slightest possibility? Well, thankfully for me, I bid my time, and 2 weeks later I did. I got out of bed and I took my first step. Still no feeling below the waist. I had doctors moving my limbs for me, and I only took 2 steps that day. It took me 90 minutes, but the day after that I took 4 steps, and the day after that I took 8, and my journey into rehabilitating had begun right there on the Gold Coast. I spent 6 weeks there until I was medically cleared safe and well enough to go back home to Sydney, be able to fly, all that kind of stuff, and continue the rehab process around my family and friends. And at this point, my recovery was almost deemed a miracle. No one had ever given me a chance at walking again. I started to regain feeling in my limbs. I was walking with assistance, those crutches that you wrap around your arms, until I woke up one morning, due to be at rehab, to continue the process. You know when you sort of sat down for too long, it could be like right now your arms are bent, or you're at work doing emails, whatever it is, and if you leave them there too long, they start to go numb, so you shake them out, pins and needles come in, you get the feeling back. I woke up one morning a little bit like that, but it was my entire left leg. It felt really heavy, I couldn't feel it again, and I couldn't move it. I thought I must have slept on it in a strange position. So I shifted myself, waited a few minutes, still nothing. Flicked on my bedside table light, I looked underneath the covers and my entire left leg was blue. Okay, this is not great. I picked up my lifeless leg, I put it to the side of my bed, I went to take a step and I face planted onto the floor. Crawled myself into the bathroom, and it was there that I realised I actually had no idea if I was using the bathroom or not. My surgeon had given me one warning, Kath, with a spinal cord injury like yours, I need you to keep an eye on one thing in particular. If your bladder or bowel shuts down, that is life-threatening, get straight to an emergency room. So get myself into the car, because I'm extremely stubborn, it's not something I'm proud of. Started driving myself towards what I thought would be rehab, with a working right leg and an automatic vehicle. And on the way there, I called my doctor, and he picked up and I explained what was going on, and he said, Kath, bypass rehab, meet me straight at RPA. Royal Prince Alfred Hospital in Sydney. So I get to RPA, park my car in the emergency bay, crawled myself into the rooms. The triage nurse, she took one look at me, she said, "Ma'am, what on earth are you doing?" And I said, "Look, here's how I woke up this morning, and this is what the last 6 months of my life have looked like." So she picks me up, puts me into a wheelchair, pushes me into the nearest consult room. It's got glass all the way around it. I can see out, they can see in. Doctors start rushing in, pinning up my leg, testing it, reading it, measuring it. It's about a half a day's worth of testing later, and what I could see that there were doctors met outside my room. There was about 6 of them. I knew that they were talking about me because they kept pointing in and touching their legs, and every time I try and lip read what one of them was saying, they'd look away from me really, really quickly. So I knew the news would not be great, but never did I anticipate what they would say to me next. One doctor walked in, and he looked at me directly and he just said, "Kath, I'm afraid the news is not great, we're going to amputate your leg." And I just sat there in shock, right? I didn't know that was something that I was facing into. I said, "Can I call someone, like a support person?" And they said, "We're actually shocked that you haven't yet." So I called my brother Grant. As far as siblings go, we're as close as you can get. I said, "Grant, they've just handed me some pretty heavy news, can you get here as quick as you can?" So Grant gets there as quick as he can. Now the funniest part about this part of the story is that Grant's a butcher. And as he got there, he had the full kit on, the bloodstained shirt, the apron, the knives on the side, and I said, "Over my dead body, are you doing this?" He was in a lot less shock to ask the questions that needed to be asked. "Explain this to us in layman's terms. What is going on here?" And I said, "All right, here's the deal. Anyone with normal, healthy limbs, depending on whether they're sitting, running, walking, crawling, whatever it is that they're doing, they've got a normal blood pressure reading anywhere between 90 and 100%. Anything below 20% is dire, and anything below 10% is dead." And I said, "Well, where am I?" And they said, "Kath, at one point this morning you're at 7%. I said, "So it's dead?" They said, "Yes, that's why it's turned blue, but it is fluctuating between 7 and 14%. And I looked at them in all sincerity and I said, "Is that what we can call hope?" Which I think is the most powerful thing that we have in situations like that. They said, "Kath, we need you to take this really serious." I said, "I am, but no one ever told me that I was at risk of having my leg amputated. What can I do to keep it attached?" I said, "Here's the deal. You've got 2 weeks to get the pressure back up. It's a blood flow issue. That's the one piece of this puzzle we do know. We can't figure out the rest at this stage. We think exercise could help, but you've got 2 weeks, Kath. If you can get it up above 20 in the next 2 weeks, we can work with that. If it drops below 10 again, it's gone on the spot. You have to have it tested every single morning. Let's see what you can do." So here's what the next 2 weeks of my life would look like. I'd get up at about 4 in the morning, I'd have a bit of brekkie, I'd go to the hospital, I'd have it tested. If I got the all clear, I'd get it moving. Had those Canadian crutches, the ones that wrap around your forearms, I would hop on my right leg, my left would just drag behind me. Shoes were all worn down, scuffed, really confronting kind of stuff. I'd go back home, I'd have more brekkie. I'd enlisted the help of a personal trainer to help me get it moving. I'd go back home, I'd have lunch. I'd go back to the gym, family and friends who knew my struggle were getting involved. I'd go back home, I'd have dinner, and then I'd try and sleep. But I don't reckon I need to tell anyone in this room what it's like to sleep when you're stressed. It was pretty hard to come by for me in that moment. I used to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning after tossing and turning for too many hours, and I had a 24-hour access pass to the Sydney Cricket Ground, the SCG. I'd drive myself into the SCG, I'd park in the car park, I'd crutch myself into the gym. Now the first night that it happened, I turned the lights on. Security guards come rushing in thinking I was an intruder, and as they got to the gates and they saw who it was, they said, "Kath, what on earth are you doing? It's 2 o'clock in the morning." And I said, "I know, but here's what I'm facing into." And rather than kicking me out, Bobby, the older guy who was always on that night shift in that 2-week period, he went back to his post and he'd come back a couple of minutes later and he had a roll of electrical tape. He said, "Look, Kath, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical expert, but what if I was to help you into the spin bike? I'll strap your leg into it, you can generate the power with your right leg, you can get it moving that way. I'll come back in 45 minutes because I've got to man my TVs. I'll come back, I'll unstrap you and I'll put you into the next machine." And I realised something in that moment. Bobby, he was right. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a medical expert. Bobby was a man who cared. And I can't tell you what that moment felt like, that there was a man who cared enough to help me, a random stranger, when he was well within his rights to kick me out, because I absolutely should not have been in there. But he didn't, he chose kindness. And I thought to myself in that moment, regardless of the outcome, if I keep this leg attached or not, I'm going to pay forward the kindness that this man's just afforded me, because it meant everything to me in that moment. But I'll progress the story. It was to no avail, they said. I couldn't get it up above 20, the leg's got to go. And that was okay, because I tried my very best to keep it attached. I was okay with living with a disability. I wasn't okay with trying my absolute hardest. My family are pretty amazing people. There's one thing that I haven't lacked in my life, and that is personal support. They are amazing, so are my friends. But they also use humour to cope a lot of the time. They decided on the day before I was due to be amputated, that they'd have a barbecue. They'd invite those closest to me, 30 family and friends, to wrap their arms around me and support me in my time of need. Legitimately, this is the invitation that my brother put together for that event. For anyone who can't see, it simply reads, Kath's last day with 2 legs barbecue, you're invited. On the menu, a leg of lamb, a leg of ham, and my personal favourite, the chicken feet as well. Now, I'm stoked that you all laughed. I get to do this all around the world. I've had 3 people in the US walk out in disgust when I show that. That's why I love Australia. It's great. But I think it proves a really important point, right? When we are stressed, we're unregulated, and cortisol rushes through our body and we get even more stress, and then we struggle to take a breath and all that kind of stuff. So as busy people that you are, sometimes finding a way to incorporate humour into life can have a really true benefit to your life, but also the lives of people around you. And it's an important attribute of kindness as well. So often I think we forget to laugh in times of stress. And my family knew me well enough to know that I wouldn't take any offence to that invite and that I would get a good chuckle out of it. So it was a form of kindness in that sense. But I'll progress the story. I was staying at Mum and Dad's that night. They were going to take me in for surgery the very next day to support me in my time of need and all that kind of stuff. And I woke up at about 2 o'clock in the morning feeling pretty crook. I went to get a glass of water and I collapsed unconsciously onto the floor. Dad heard the thud, it woke him up, he picked me up, put me into the car, rushed me to the nearest hospital in St George, where they did an entire body scan and realised I was bleeding internally from the stomach wound I mentioned earlier. What happened was, in closing that wound, the surgeon, very accidentally of course, and very slightly nicked the femoral artery that ran into my left leg. Because I had extensive nerve damage and a spinal cord injury, what that meant was that the limited supply of blood, it simply wouldn't carry into my left leg. So I'm raced off for more emergency surgery. 4 hours later, I start feeling around. Is my leg attached? Now, I've seen pretty much everyone look at my leg. I promise you it's real. I can't feel anything below my left kneecap. That's a disability I now live with as a result of that injury. But I think the doctors could see that panic too. So they come rushing on over and they said, yes, Kath, it's attached, but you're not out of the woods yet, mate, in order to keep it healthy and attached. And if you ever want the chance at walking again, off to rehab you go. 12 months, there's no guarantee you're walking at the end of it, but it's your only chance. So off to rehab I went. I was 23, and in rehab they had 3 categories: the over 65s, the over 75s, and the over 85s. So where do you reckon they put me at 23? I was with these guys, the 85s. I won the calf race competition every day, which I was pretty stoked about. But these guys taught me more about life than I knew I needed to know at that point in time. There I was, daring to feel sorry for myself for the injuries that I'd sustained. The guy on the left was an 85-year-old war veteran by the name of Attila who had bullet holes in his back. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he taught me the gift of perspective, which I think has to be one of the most potent and powerful ingredients that we have when enduring and, of course, overcoming adversity. The other thing I noticed about Attila, he had to have been the happiest man I've ever met, yet he'd faced and suffered the most atrocious things a human being could. And it made me realise that happiness was a choice just like every other attribute in life and behaviour. The woman on the right, my best mate from rehab, Daisy. Daisy wasn't actually a name, it was Iris. I called her Daisy because she called me Alice. She had dementia, she'd suffered a stroke, and she actually thought I was her granddaughter, which warmed and broke my heart at the same time. Every single day at 3 o'clock, we had a break in our schedule at the same time at 3 o'clock. And I used that as our hour of power together. I took her a cup of tea. I knew how she liked it, the water to milk ratio, all that kind of stuff. And as I'd take her that tea and I'd sit down with her, in exchange for that tea, Days would sit there and she'd tell me the most amazing stories I've ever heard. I don't reckon any of them were true, but they were really awesome stories. All the same. Again, the gift of perspective, but also that friendship has no boundaries, right? And we shouldn't let age or influence or culture or background get in the way of the beauty of friendship in our lives. And as good as mates as these guys were, and as much as they taught me about life that I needed to know in that moment, I'll never forget day 6 on my journey in rehab. It was by far the hardest day of my rehab because I hadn't even reached the week 1 milestone. I kept thinking to myself, and I was absolutely battling with my environment. I can't even get through a week of this. How am I going to do 12 months of it? And I didn't know what to do. I could barely speak. And I remember picking up my phone and I called my best friend, Erin, who has to be the strongest woman I have ever met. And I said, mate, can you come and pick me up? She said, Kath, I'm really confused. What do you mean, can I come and pick you up? You're in rehab for the next 12 months. I was visiting yesterday. I said, I know, mate, but I can't do that. If my leg goes, then so be it. This is not a challenge that I'm up for. I'm just struggling too badly. And I'll never, ever forget what she said to me. She said, Kath, you're my best friend. There is nothing in the world that I would not do for you, mate. If I could trade places with you, I would in a heartbeat, and I can't, and that absolutely breaks me as the closest person in your life. What I can do is I can promise you this. If you pick up the phone at any hour of the day, I promise you, mate, I will answer that phone. And together, side by side, I will come in, I'll hold your hand, and we'll take those steps together. I've seen you do hard things before. I know you can do this. Please just set your mind to it. And in that moment, I realised a few things about life. One, that I had one of the strongest people in my life that would always support me and have my back, which I don't think there's anything more important. But two, that there is a very big difference between being nice and between being kind. Nice is, of course, I'll come and pick you up. I can see that you're struggling, but I know it's to the detriment of your health. Kind, absolutely not. But what I will do is promise you that I'll show up and we'll get through this together. And if you have the opportunity to do that for a person in your life, please don't hesitate. Because when you're that low and you're battling that much with your environment and your situation, you need someone to show up for you. That's what I've found anyway, and I've been incredibly lucky to have that support in my life. How this impacts leadership, what it feels like, the difference between nice and kindness. Nice is passive and easy. It will normally be something that you can just brush by. Kindness is active and hard. And you should be able to feel that in the positions that you're in at any given moment. So with her words ringing in my ears, I committed myself to the process. Learning to walk again when everyone's telling it's near impossible, pretty big challenge as you can imagine. But I think like any challenge in life, if you break a challenge into smaller bite-sized chunks, it becomes so much more manageable. Here was the plan. I'd go from bed to chair, chair to frame, frame to stick, sticks to stick. If I had to crawl, I would, and then I'd be on my way. Much tougher when you're in the guts of it every single day. But thankfully for me, my luck changed in the most amazing of ways just 4 weeks into my stay. I met a fellow patient. His name was Jim. He played a bit of rugby. He'd injured his spine not playing rugby. Of all things, it was the Tough Mudder obstacle race. He was on the monkey bar challenge. Someone had gone too early, pushed into his back. He fell very awkwardly and fractured part of his spine too. And there we were, very similar age, very similar mindset, with a very similar background and a goal of teaching ourselves how to walk again. And when he got there on day one, I could see the overwhelm on his face, what it felt like to be on day one. It's a pretty big deal. So I thought he could probably use a friend. That was me just 4 weeks prior. I'll take it upon myself to give him a tour of rehab, show him the ropes, where to get the yogurt from, which doctors to deal with, all that kind of stuff. And very quickly, and much to my surprise, as the days went on, Jim and I fell in love, which is a little bit funny because who finds love in a rehab centre? I did, and it was truly magical. The most magical experience of my life, in fact. Jim and I, we were like normal young kids in love. Instead of long walks on the beach, we did wheelchair races in the corridor and all that kind of stuff. Really just made that environment our own. But what made our time in rehab so much more bearable when you're in the struggle of it every single day was dreaming of a life that would exist once we'd finished rehab. So what's the reward that we can look forward to so that at the end of this, we can look back on it, be proud of where we met, what we got through, and how we got through it together. And those dreams were pretty amazing. They looked like this. It'd be 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl, just like my family, a house in Broadwater on the Gold Coast, pet turtles, and a dog named Saf, which I've often, and like I never ever have before. The 13th of November in 2012 is a day that I'll never ever forget. We've been going out for 12 months. I was now considered an outpatient at rehab. My journey into relearning how to walk again was successful. I was doing so with crutches and aids. I visited rehab 3 mornings a week, and then I could go home or to work and transition back into normal life. Jim had a day to go before he was to be considered an outpatient. We'd just put the lease on the house together, and the dreams that we were dreaming were about to come true the very next day. That night he passed away. It was suicide, and it absolutely crushed me beyond belief. Time changed for me that day. If not the time that was my life, then the time that I have ever had it easy. Do you know when you're having one of those days when nothing goes right? It's the traffic on the way to work, it's the emails that are backing up, the kids that are screaming at you, and the dishes in the sink. Those small, insignificant moments, I was praying for those moments to matter to me again. Because in the aftermath of his passing, I completely lost myself and nothing mattered at all. First, I lose this dream of playing cricket, the one thing that I wanted to do since I was a little girl, and then I lost the person who taught me that there was so much more to life than hitting a ball around a park. And I hit rock bottom in every single way possible. 10 months after his passing, I had a complete emotional breakdown. And it was at my rock bottom moment that I found the tiniest sliver of hope. And the best thing about this realization is you don't have to endure adversity to learn from it. Genuinely thinking that I would never ever be happy, I got myself to the Gold Coast where we were going to start our life together. Completely lost and very unhopeful in that moment. I sat down at a coffee table in the Gold Coast, and on the coffee table there was a piece of paper and a pen. Nothing fancy, it was there for a shopping list. And I don't know why I did what I did next, but I'm so glad that it happened. I picked up the pen and I started writing down a list of names of people in my life who had shown up for me. One name turned into 10, the next thing I knew, there was 30 names on this sheet of paper. And at my rock bottom moment, never thinking that I would ever be happy again, I remember picking up this piece of paper, holding it in front of my face and saying to myself, Kath, this is 30 reasons to keep going. But then what I did is I picked up my phone and I called every single person on that list simply to say thank you. The first was my doctor. He must have seen my name flash up on the screen. He picked up immediately. He said, oh my God, what have you done? What have you broken? How do I help? I said, no, Doc, I'm not calling for that. I just wanted to say thanks. And he said, Kath, you don't have to thank me. It's my job, but also it's been a privilege. Before you go, let me tell you how proud I'm of you, and thanks for calling. I was extremely worried. Every single person on that list had a very similar response. And at the end of that process, it wasn't like I swallowed a magical pill where everything was amazing. Far from it, had a long way to go. But I knew that if I surrounded myself with good people, I could overcome anything. And that is the power of gratitude. Science says if we write down 3 things we're grateful for 21 days in a row, it will literally rewire our brains. Our stress goes down, our resilience increases, our well-being, physical and emotional, starts to improve. Not only that, as you start to do that, you then start to scan your environment for more reasons to be grateful. It's a pretty potent thing to be around. I always like to say someone rather than something though, right? I'll get you all to do me a favor right now. Just a couple of moments. I want you to think of a person in your life who's always shown up for you. Someone who's always had your back. It could be a spouse, a sibling, a partner, a friend, a child, a colleague, whoever it is. They might even be in this room. Have you got them pictured? Let's think about this for a second. It's their birthday coming up. So you say, I'm going to get them the gift they've always wanted. So you go to the store, you pick out the gift, you pay for it, you wrap it up, you put a bow on it. It's their birthday, you put it in the cupboard and you never give it to them. It'd be a complete waste, wouldn't it? I think the same goes for feeling gratitude but not expressing it. Who are you grateful for? And that you have this person pictured in your mind, let me ask you this. Have you told them? If yes, great, do it again. If not, why not? Because I guarantee you, not only will it strengthen the bond that you already hold and that already exists, it will be the greatest gift that you give them and yourself in the process. So if there's nothing else that you take from me today, please reach out to that person and thank them for being a part of your life. It's a vulnerable conversation, but it's a very important one. And life is bloody short, and we never know when we're next going to get that opportunity. So with that, I come back home to Sydney. I was around my support networks again, but I felt quite lost. Why had I at such a young age gone through these big life hurdles, and what did they even mean to me? And people who knew my story, that often ask, quite curiously, with no judgment, Kath, if there's something that stands out to you throughout your struggle, what is it? No judgment in the response. It could be good, bad, or ugly. And my answer was always kindness, for reasons like Bobby, the security guard who helped me, but also when you're in a wheelchair like I have been and you can't reach a lift button, and a random stranger walks past and he sees that struggle and he presses that button for you, and it means nothing to his day but everything to yours because you get downstairs and do what you needed to do next. Those are the most important moments in life, and they are so powerful. Those small interactions that we can have with another person that can literally change the course of someone's year, day, and life. The greatest privilege that we all have, in my opinion, is understanding this notion. Every single interaction that we have with another person, the person that you're sitting next to, the person that you work with, or the person that you sleep next to overnight, even the person who makes your coffee. It has an incredible opportunity to lift someone up for an encouraging word, a hug, a high five, compliment, or it can have the complete opposite effect by dragging them down, abuse, name-calling, etc. And that choice is ours and ours alone to make. So I was inspired by the kindness of others. It was on me in that moment to pay forward the kindness I'd received. So I started doing small things for other people. I bought dinner for the homeless, raised a ton of money for kids in wheelchairs, bought a hairdresser lunch, he started paying that forward by cutting people's hair for free. And it just simply felt good. It lifted me out of that. And there's a reason for that. When we're in a kind state, we're in an oxytocin state, which is the love hormone that rushes through your body, and it makes you feel good. And that's the only time that my life made sense to me as a young adult trying to navigate their way through life. But my life really changed when I met this woman. Her name's Mel. The difference between Mel and most of us is that she actually has no legs. 20 years ago, completely able-bodied, running late for a meeting. She went to get onto the train to make the meeting on time, got stuck between the train and the platform. Let's not get into the rest of it. She created an organisation when she was through that process that supported those who had lost a limb. It's like a peer-to-peer platform. And given that I come so close to having my leg amputated, they helped me out. And I simply felt quite grateful. I think this story is a really great one to highlight the importance of gratitude and really what it can lead to. The power in it, I guess. I reached out to Mel to say thanks. We're having a coffee. An hour into the conversation, she starts to check her watch. She says, look, mate, we've got to get going. I'm running late, all that kind of stuff. I said, look, before you go, can I ask a personal question? She said, of course. She doesn't mind me sharing. I said, what do you miss most about having two normal, healthy legs? She said, you're probably going to laugh at me. I said, no, go on. She goes, Kath, I really miss being able to do burpees. I did laugh because burpees are disgusting. I said, what do you mean? And she said, I can't do them anymore. I used to be right into fitness. I can't use my prosthetics in that way. And I said, well, I'm doing pretty well physically. What if I was to do some for you? How about this as an idea? For every $1 that the public donates towards Limbs for Life, your organisation, I'll do one burpee. I don't know that many people. It'd be great. Raise about $100. You know those GoFundMe pages? Yeah. I set up one of them. I shared my story. An hour later, I checked the account. There was $3,000 in it. So a lot of burpees. Halfway through setting the challenge and doing it, my best friend Erin called. She said, oi, I just Googled it. Did you realise the world record for the most amount of burpees in a day is 10,000? I said, no, why? She goes, have you checked the account? I said, no. She said, Kath, there's over $10,000 in it. I was like, awesome. It's going to be a really fun day. The next day, my phone rang and it flashed up like a UK number. I said, g'day, it's Kath speaking. Hi, is this Kath Koschel? I said, yes, it is. He said, it's Will from the Guinness World Record. We heard you're attempting a world record for the most amount of burpees in a day. Is that correct? I said, Will, that is absolutely not correct. He said, look, we'd love to show up and make it official. Would that be okay? I said, you know what, let's do it. So the night before I'm due to do this challenge, it's at $14,650. So I'm going to do that many burpees in a world record attempt the next day. And I was like, I'm fighting for something bigger here. If I burpee till I drop it, it takes me 24 hours, I'll get this done. Well, something amazing happened that night. Michael Clark, the ex-Australian cricket captain, he tweeted the link. It went viral in India. And I woke up to news there was $300,000 in the account. Not wanting to miss an opportunity, but wanting to do a lot of good, I went onto social media, which gets a lot of bad raps. But like anything, if you use it for good, it can do a lot of good. I said, look, I've committed myself to a world record attempt, 14,650 burpees. Is there anyone else that could possibly show up and help me with the other 300,000? Here's what happened next. It was one of the greatest days of my life. Thank you very much. So as I said, it was one of the greatest days of my life for a lot of different reasons. Everyone always asks, did you break the record? I did. It's since been broken and I have zero ambition to re-break it. Well, it was a good day. Nothing to do with world records, absolutely nothing, although it is hanging in my bedroom, the certificate and all that kind of stuff. Two reasons I want to highlight. Did you notice Mel at the end of the video and the emotion that she felt for 300 people showing up to help her organisation out? Put simply, for me to be able to give back to a person and an organisation who helps me so much, it meant the world. But also this, 300 people showed up. That's 100 of my closest family and friends. I didn't know the other 200 people. And it really just proved to me the world's a pretty good place. Sometimes we need to seek that opportunity and give people permission to help us out. And with that, it really felt like my life had turned around. Yes, I'd been through a lot at a very early age, but it didn't mean that I couldn't live a life that I was proud of, true to my values and purpose as a person. And I ended up back at rehab just for a routine checkup, having a conversation with my team. They said, Kath, we've got some really good news for a change. We're actually ready to discharge you for life. You don't have to keep coming back. You're up for that. I said, absolutely. I really hate coming to rehab. And they said, all right, any questions before you go? I said, I've got one. Maybe it's more of a statement. I miss playing cricket. I was a right-handed batter. You need your left leg in working order to be able to do that. I can't do that anymore with my disability. Is there anything else physically you think I could do? I said, look, it would make sense to us. Your recovery was based in a pool and on a bike. If you added in the run, you'd be a really good triathlete. Why don't you give that a go? I said, okay, I'll give it a crack. So I signed up for a tester, absolutely loved it. Ended up being the first person with my disability to do a half Ironman. I did it in 2015 on the Sunshine Coast. I did so well at that event that I actually qualified for a full Ironman, so a 3.8k swim, 180-kilometre bike ride, and a full marathon at the end. Training was on track. I was the fittest I've ever been in my life 4 months out from the event. In January of 2016, I was on a training bike ride with my best mate Erin. We're going from the south of Sydney to the north of Sydney to have brekkie and then go home. Got to the north side of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, started making my way towards a right-hand turn lane to make my descent into the northern beaches for breakfast. And suddenly I just felt a thud on my body and everything went black. I got hit by a drunk driver from behind. I broke my back again, this time in 4 places. I shattered my left hip, I broke my right wrist, and I dislocated my neck. The worst part, waking up from a coma 2 months later to the news that I was paralysed and told that I'd never walk again for the second time in my life. What do you do? Who do you turn to? And how do you cope? I promise you I do not have magical abilities in overcoming adversity. I feel things just like the rest of us. I think I mentioned earlier, the most potent and powerful thing or ingredient when overcoming adversity, in my opinion, is perspective. And as I woke up from that coma, I really didn't have to search too hard for it. At the end of my bed were my parents. They had always supported me, and this was no exception. I could see the expression on their face. They were ghostly white. And for the first time in my life, I considered what it would be like to be my parents. And I said to myself, in that hospital bed, Kath, you are the lucky one here. You're not them having to watch this. I think that would be a much harder thing to do. So just breathe a little bit deeper and do not put them through any more struggle and pain. And that's the one thing that kept me alive in that hospital bed. I spent 6 weeks in ICU fighting off infection on the daily. I went onto the wards for 6 months. And then I had to teach myself how to walk again when every single person on the planet told me it was impossible. You know what? That wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was facing the man who hit me with his car in court. It was a 3-day process. The first day he didn't show up. This man had never said sorry to me. On the second day, the charges were handed out, and on the third day, in pretty emotional scenes, it all sort of erupted. And I had to remind myself as I went to the court each day, this man made a terrible mistake, but it was just that, a mistake. He didn't intentionally try and harm me. I make at least 20 mistakes a day. My team would argue it's closer to 30. Thankfully for me, I thought, none of my mistakes have gone on to change someone's life in this way. And as the charges were handed out, he broke down in tears in court. I could still barely walk, and I went over to this man, and I put my hand on his shoulder because he was on the floor by this point, and I said, mate, are you okay? And he looked up at me and said, no, I'm not. And I said, I can see that. How are you getting home today? He said, I don't know, I can't afford a taxi, and obviously I can't drive. So I looked down at this man, I said, we'll give you a lift. And he looked up at me, and he said, I don't think that's a very good idea. My dad, he was a cop for 40 years. The last 10 of them, he was at King's Cross. He's seen some stuff. The toughest man I've ever met, but also the fairest, and loves me endlessly. He was there in support of me, and as he stood there next to me as I offered this man a lift home, and the man said it wasn't a very good idea, Dad interjected and he said, Kath, that is definitely not a very good idea. But you know what we did? We gave this man a lift. It was a 15-minute journey. You could have heard a pin drop. Silence the whole way. Dad's driving, he's in the front, I'm in the back. And as he gets out the front of his house, we did, he goes to get out of the car, no thanks for the ride, still no sorry. As he shuts the door or goes to shut the door, he looks at me in the back and he just said to me, why did you just do that? And before I could even think, I just said, because your actions don't control mine. I would have done that for any other person on the planet. I'm not going to let your behaviour change the person that I am. It was important to me to stay true to who I was. So he gets out of the car, I thought I'll jump in with Dad. So I'm in the front with Dad, the engine's running, we're sat there, no movement. I looked to the toughest man I've ever known, and he's just got tears running down his face. And I said, oh my God, Dad, what's wrong? And he said, look, mate, before I go on, I need you to know your mum and I, we're so proud of you, we are. But Kath, it's so bloody hard to be your parents sometimes. And I said, I know, Dad, I know. And he said, mate, can you just explain this to me? Because that man is responsible. Kath, I had to watch you crawl through life, mate, and I don't think any parent should have to do that. And that man's responsible for it. Why have I just done this? I said, all right, Dad, at a young age, you actually gave me a poster that I used to hang above my bed and it had a quote on it. Do you remember this? And he said, yeah, it's still in your old bedroom. I said, do you remember what it reads? He said, no, I don't, remind me. I said, it simply reads, the world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. Do you mind me asking, why did you give me that? Legit, he looks at me and he goes, mate, I really hate to break this to you, but I'm pretty sure I got it for free at work. So I said, well, thanks for ruining a whole life's learning of me, Dad. I said, no, Dad, I'm sick of it. You go onto TV, right, and we see the news. I don't need to tell anyone about the hatred that's going on in the world at the moment. I know that everyone in this room would be feeling it. Or we go onto social media, and we see hate as human beings, bullying, domestic violence, family violence, gun violence, war, terrorism. And a natural response to hate, unfortunately, is hate. And it creates a whole world of hate, and I'm not proud to be a part of it. And with that quote in mind, I want to see change, Dad. He said, all right, Kath, and we had this beautiful moment. He drops me home, and I started to feel like I was sliding back down again. Why did I have this big affinity and kindness? I knew it was important. I knew it had an ability to turn my life around, but why was everyone trying to prove me wrong? So, Dad nearly killed me, but here's what I did next. I went onto social media and I said, look, on this day at this time, I'm going to leave my home with nothing but the clothes on my back. No cash, credit card, food or water. I'm not going to accept help of family or friends. So in order to survive, I can only accept help and kindness of strangers. I didn't know how long I'd last, but it ended up reaching news stations all around the world. And I had 10,000 people reach out to help me as far as Britain, America, Amsterdam, Europe, and of course here in Australia. And I ended up travelling for 2 months to every single state in Australia. 100 people helped me directly in a face-to-face interaction on that journey, but there were 10,000 other people that reached out to do the same. And I reckon I learnt more about myself in that 2 months than I have the rest of my life to date. I learnt that adversity is a relative experience. Every single person who helped me on that journey had a story that would break your heart. And then you could see a person in need. They knew they had the means to be able to help me, and so they did. And we were able to heal together. But as a result of that journey, I started to inspire lots of different people from all around the world to share acts of kindness. So we set a goal back then to reach 1 million acts of kindness. I never thought we'd get there. I remember when we were at 10 on the website and people would reach out and go, what are you going for again? I'd go, we're going for 1 million. And they go, oh, mate, you're a long way from that. You're at 10. I'd go, yeah, but we're 10 in from 0, so it's all good. But as I stand here tonight, there's been over 6.5 million acts of kindness logged from all around the globe. I travel the world as a motivational speaker. It's now a best-selling book, all that kind of stuff. But you know what? Those 6.5 million people, I haven't spoken to all of them. That would be impossible. But the ones that I have spoken to, and I can guarantee you the ones that I haven't, that all tell me one thing, Kath, it just feels good. And there's a reason for that. As I mentioned earlier, when we're in a kind state, we're in the most oxytocin state we can be. Dopamine starts to rush through our body as well as serotonin, and we start to feel good. You cannot be in a more oxytocin state than when you're giving or receiving kindness. So if that's not proof alone, why are we not doing it more? Not just in a corporate setting, but in our communities, in our schools, all those sorts of things. If we were to dig into the science a bit more, I realised that kindness is an umbrella term, a plethora of different things that make up the genetic DNA of kindness. Things like self-acceptance, gratitude, humility, humour, perspective, the things that we've started to talk about tonight. That's now a kindness curriculum. It focuses in primary schools. We've got age-appropriate resources that teach teachers how to teach this stuff. It's in 3,500 Aussie schools, beyond that in the US and in the UK as well. And at a corporate setting, scientists and researchers much smarter than me that I employ, they started to come up with kindness equations. What's the diversity kindness equation? How do we absorb this into settings that we exist within? What's the resilience one? There's a multitude of different things that you can adapt this thing to. But the 3 things, or the 3 questions that I'm going to leave this audience with before I leave the stage are these. The first, have you laughed today? If not at me, then find a way later. Go onto YouTube, get someone to tell you a joke, tell someone a joke, do the memes, whatever way possible, but make sure it's a belly laugh, because we're all stressed and we need to de-stress. The second question, what are you grateful for? As mentioned earlier, science says if we write down 3 things we're grateful for 21 days in a row, it literally will rewire your brain. Physiologically, the health will improve, it has cardiovascular benefits, and of course, emotional and mental health as well. And please, as a gift to me, and if you don't take anything else than this, please reach out to that person who has always had your back and thank them. Because life is bloody short, and we never know if we're going to get that opportunity. And it'll be the greatest gift that you give yourself and them in the process. The third, which comes with a strong preface, especially for people like yourself in the industry that you are. What is the kindest thing that you have done today? The preface is this. Kindness to self is more important than kindness to others. We cannot give kindness to others unless we are genuine and authentic in kindness towards ourselves. In preparation for this event, I had to get onto a plane. I'm from Sydney and LA. And the first thing I heard when I got onto that plane was a safety drill. In case of an emergency, oxygen masks will fall down from the ceiling. You've got to put yours on first before helping others. Same goes for kindness. We can't be kind to others, true and authentic kindness, unless we are kind to ourselves. So what do you need today, tomorrow, or any day into the future that gives yourself that little bit of kindness? To go for a walk, tell someone you love them, pat a dog, go for a run, whatever that looks like for you, please prioritize that before others. You have to put on your oxygen mask first. Kindness is the most important and undervalued and underappreciated asset that we have to creating human change. So I can't thank you all enough for letting me speak with you tonight and hearing my story. And I'll leave you on this note. Please be kind. If you can't be kind, then just don't be an asshole. Cheers, guys. Thank you.